My name is Shona Bradshaw. I'm the Marketing Manager at Bytes Security Partnerships, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Paul Dignan, who is the Global Technical Account Manager for F5, who's going to be talking to you today about some options on replacing and transitioning from Microsoft TMG. Hopefully you can all hear me and see my screen fine. Please do pop any questions or comments on the questions box if you have any issues during the webinar, and I'll pick those up. Now, just to get started, a brief agenda for today's webinar. Today's webinar is designed to provide an update on the pending end of support for Microsoft Threat Management Gateway and provide insight into appropriate replacement solutions from Bytes' key partner F5. So the agenda for today will give a brief introduction to Bytes for those of you who aren't aware of who we are and what we do. I will keep it brief. We'll briefly explain why this end of support announcement is important. I'll then introduce Paul from F5, who will look at the latest information on TMG going end of support, who will present some of F5's replacement options for TMG replacement, and also give us some information on planning to transition away from TMG. So just to bit of housekeeping for the call. Attendee lines will be on mute throughout the call. However, we do welcome questions throughout the webinar, and we will run a full question and answer session at the end of the session. So please do put those questions in via the questions box. In terms of the webinar today, we will be talking technology and having strategic discussions only. We won't be dealing with any of the commercials as regards F5 products. Of course, further discussions are welcome with your account manager, and we do welcome those. Any questions that come into us, I'll make sure those are passed on to your Bytes account managers. We will also have a feedback survey at the end of the call, or a chance to get a bit of feedback on the relevance of the session for yourselves. Please do take the opportunity to fill that in. Lastly, we will have a recording available of this session for everyone who attended and those who couldn't join us, and I will share those recording links with yourselves over the next 2 days. So just to give a very brief overview of Bytes. So Bytes are part of the 2.3 billion Altron Electronics Group, who are based in South Africa. Within the UK, Bytes Technology Group as a UK business is comprised of 3 separate business lines. There are Bytes Document Solutions, who look at the who look after Xerox and document management solutions. Bytes Software Services, who are the largest Microsoft reseller, value-added reseller in the UK, and also Bytes Security Partnerships, who are the specialist security wing of the business, who look after security solutions, network security, and who are the specialist security company within the UK business. So a little bit more about security partnerships specifically. We were bought by the Bytes Group in 2011, founded in 1999 as just plain old security partnerships. Since acquisition, we have been aiming to combine the agility and specialism of a small independent reseller with the backing of a large global software group. So we look at retaining personal service and technical excellence, and also are then able to pair up with our Bytes Software Services colleagues to make sure that we can look at security as part of the wider IT infrastructure. 50% of our employees are technical, so that means that we can provide a great technical service to customers, and for that reason we hold top partner statuses. What that means is that with vendors we can provide both technical support for our customers and also real commercial value. One of the things that makes us unique is that we offer direct to engineer support, so that whenever any customers have any issues or any consultancy, they are dealing direct with an engineer, and we have great feedback from our customers in terms of the quality of the support that we. Why is this significant? Well, Microsoft have not launched any on-premise successor products. that poses a dilemma for those companies who have no plans to move to external cloud-based infrastructure for this type of security solution. A lot of our customers are therefore coming to us looking for a non-cloud alternative, although the Microsoft decision makes perfect sense in light of their strategy moving down the cloud route for many of their solutions. It does leave security managers out there looking for ways to secure their internet-facing Microsoft applications. So that's really why we're talking about this to you today. We want to help you prepare for the transition in advance and also make you aware of relevant and appropriate replacement solutions. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Paul, who's our F5 expert on TMG, and I'll hand over to him. He'll take you through the rest of the webinar, and then I'll come back on the line to pose some questions to Paul, which you have posed throughout the webinar. The screen will just briefly go to a holding screen, and then you should be able to see Paul's slides. Let me know if you have any problems, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Shona. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, my name is Paul Dignan, and I'm a technical account manager, or global technical account manager with F5. This morning, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of information about who F5 are. As I suspect some of you will be probably more focused on the application side of things rather than the space where F5 really dominate. And for those of you who are familiar with F5, well, good morning, and I'll be taking you through what we can do in terms of helping you with your application stack from Microsoft now that TMG is going to be going away effectively. So we'll kick off with just a little bit of information about F5 themselves and how we got to where we are in terms of what we have in our technology stack and what our focus is as a business. So F5 are a US company. We're based out of Seattle, and we launched probably around about 2003, 2004, where we brought to market what we term the application delivery controller. And we dominate this market. You will find us in the Gartner reports in the top right-hand corner, and we have done since day one, effectively. What this is about is about traffic management. It's about making applications optimal in terms of performance and in terms of availability. And this is where we really drove our functionality from. Our core functions are all around traffic management, understanding applications and making them available to your end users. Then around probably about 8 years ago now, we started to expand our portfolio through both internal development and through acquisition to really start to move with the times, to really bring a lot of capabilities in around things such as security, things like firewall functionality, DDoS protection, the ability to have global availability, protect DNS and these kind of things. And we acquired several companies to bring functionality in at that time, as well as, as I said, internal development. So our portfolio really started to move on then. And then we started to think about cloud, probably around about 4 years ago. Starting to add functionality in which will allow us to deliver the same level of application services, irrespective of whether you'll be deploying your applications on your own environment or whether you'll be doing that in a cloud-based environment or in a hybrid of both. So we started to bring that kind of functionality in. So hypervisor support, kind of agnostic across all the main hypervisor variants, orchestration capabilities, multi-tenancy, and the ability to do strong identity management, all key parts in that area. We've got to the point now where we have what we term software-defined application services. And this basically means that we can take all of the application-level services that we have together, and we can make them available across a fabric of devices, irrespective of where you're going to be deploying your applications and on what infrastructure that might be done. And that's not just whether it's on your premise or whether it's on cloud, but also whether it's on your premise or physical, whether you're using virtual, whether you're looking to do things like SDN, for example. Where F5 sit is we have a range of technologies, both physical and virtual appliances and chassis for large scale, that that we can apply the application services on top, covering what we would call layer 4 to 7 application services. So the key things that you would need to deploy any application to any user, whether they're on-premise, accessing remotely, a third-party partner or something like that, all of these things become key. Making sure the application is secure, making sure that it's always available, as delivered as optimally as possible, being able to cope with the latest innovations in IT, such as mobility and the changes and challenges that's brought in remote access, and also managing who can do what, who can access what, under what circumstances, so the identity and access management piece. So we have a whole range of technology all around that, around orchestrating that, around delivery of that, as I said, across whichever type of environment that you're going to be using, whether that's on your own premise or whether that's going to be off-premise, or a combination of the both. So very quick introduction to who F5 are. Of course, today we're here to talk about TMG and what you can possibly do now that TMG is going to go end of sale. As you can see from the slide which has just come up now, F5 and Microsoft have a very strong partnership. We're both based in Seattle, effectively. We're not far from each other. We have staff on site at each other's premises 24/7, and we've been partnering now for around about 12 years. And we have multiple integrations across our entire product set. And in fact, Microsoft are one of F5's biggest customers, as well as one of our best partners. A lot of Microsoft infrastructure is one using F5 equipment to deliver services out to the field, such as things like Xbox Live, for example. We are a technology center alliance partner, as you can see, and we have multiple joint solutions that were developed together with Microsoft to speed delivery of applications, to optimize applications, and to secure them, as we've talked about already. We are, for example, certified to do things like delivery of SharePoint, delivery of Lync, Exchange. We have optimizations across all of Microsoft's core functions, and the ability to simplify how you deploy those, simplify the architecture of those, improve performance, and speed your time to market with them. So lots of very good work that we've done with Microsoft over the years that you can bring to bear in your environment. So in terms of TMG itself, so TMG has a couple of different roles, as I'm sure you're aware. Its core function really is to allow you to make your Microsoft applications available to the internet. Clearly, exposing Windows servers and internet web servers to the internet without protection is not a desirable thing to do. So hence TMG brought capabilities such as the ability to bring some application security, some traffic management capability, some firewall functionality, and some identity management, remote access kind of capability into that as well. But as Gemma says, you have a challenge in that it's going to go end of sale, end of support in the immediate future. So the question is, how are you going to continue to deliver those applications out in your environment if you're going to continue to deliver them from your own premises? So clearly there are options. There are a lot of point solutions that you could look at on the market. I guess the challenge for doing that would be, we're talking about multiple different solution scenarios: firewalls, VPNs, web application firewalls, and traffic management. If you buy best of breed from individual vendors, then you will have a lot of point solutions that you will need to try and integrate and manage, which will be difficult, to be frank. From an F5 perspective, we have a solution, as I referred to before, where you have the ability to layer application services onto our platform. Our platform, which is known as Big IP, runs our own operating system, which is TMOS, our traffic managed operating system, and it has a modular approach to applying different levels of capability. So you can see three acronyms on the screen there. LTM is our traffic management module, APM is our access policy management module, and ASM is our application security management module. All of these can run on the same hardware, side by side, and others on top of those, or a combination of. So what we have here is the ability to provide a consolidated way of delivering a TMG replacement, and actually allowing you then to not only replace what you have already, but optimize the capabilities within there without having to go for point solutions. And I did mention the phrase best of breed. Well, actually with F5, in things like the traffic management space, in the web application firewall space, and so forth, you actually have best of breed with F5 anyway, because we are market leaders in these spaces. So let's look at the individual components of TMG. So from a traffic management perspective, obviously Microsoft's applications, when you deliver them out, tend to go out over as web traffic, HTTP, HTTPS, or TCP at best. And so TMG is really focused on delivering out that kind of protocol. So a little limited in what it could do there, but focused effectively on what it wanted to do. Some simple monitoring in the product, so the ability to do pings against your servers, limited checks against application availability using gets against the websites, or maybe just check if a TCP port responds correctly. And then some persistence. So as you can see, either source IP persistence or cookie persistence was available in TMG to make sure that the users get back to the server that they were working on. And then some SSL offloading for your applications that enable you to do a little bit of offloading and bridging where the SSL is stopped and terminated on TMG, then re-encrypted and passed on through to effectively give you a reverse proxy kind of scenario where you do not have a direct link out to or in from the external side to your application servers. There is a termination point there, and redirect support. With F5, we can do all of this, but we actually extend those capabilities out, which will allow you then to deliver not just your Microsoft applications, but your entire application portfolio with this kind of controlling capability. We are, as I mentioned, we built our business on traffic management in the first instance, and it's our core in terms of our capability, and this is where we really dominate in the marketplace. We have multiple protocol support, so not just HTTP, HTTPS. Pretty much most protocols that you can think of we will cover within there. And we are a full proxy, not just a reverse proxy. So any traffic that is going to come into your environment gets stopped by us. We can decrypt it, inspect it, and then make intelligent decisions about how to direct that traffic into your environment going forward, if at all. This also allows us to do such things as apply protections against attacks, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. Our monitoring capability is very, very granular, not only limited to such things as is the server there, but also we can do synthetic transactions into your application to say not only is the server there, is the server responding, is the application responding, and the services within that application, are they working as expected? So, for example, we have some customers who will actually log a user into their applications, run a transaction, check the response for that is as expected, and only when that happens does the monitor give a pass against the availability of that service. So to be able to go that granular obviously has benefits in terms of understanding whether you should be sending traffic to that server in the first place, rather than just a simple does the server respond to a ping, for example. In terms of persistence, we have a swathe of different persistence capabilities that we can bring to bear, as well as source and cookie. We can also do things like destination address persistence, Microsoft RDP persistence, to make sure that users get sent right back to the correct server that's hosting their RDP desktop or application, for example. Source address, SSL persistence. We even have universal persistence where you can define your own criteria under what terms you would want to persist a session as well. So very granular, again, in that respect. In terms of SSL, then this is where we'll really come into our own as well. Obviously, our platforms include hardware as well as virtual editions. The hardware ones include physical capability specifically designed for doing SSL processing. So we have FPGAs on board that will do the SSL encryption and decryption, and also will allow us to do very, very fast SSL processing without impacting our boxes. The type of scale that we have is market leading, to be frank, in terms of just how quickly and with what throughput we can process SSL at. And clearly there's benefits from doing that. If you can take the SSL off your own servers, your Exchange servers, for example, or your SharePoint servers, those servers are then able, what they should be doing, which is not processing SSL, but serving content instead. Similarly, we do the same for connection management. So rather than opening lots of connections to your back-end web servers, we can multiplex those down using our OneConnect technology, which allows us to maintain a single persistent connection to a web server and route all traffic down through that. And there's significant benefits again in terms of performance from doing that kind of technology. So traffic management, and that's done using our LTM, our local traffic manager module, sits on TMOS as I mentioned before. In terms of client authentication, so TMG was actually quite good in this space. A lot of different authentication technologies supported, and again, very similar with F5. We support all the the ones that you would expect: AD, LDAP, TACACS, Radius, the usual suspects, NCLM and Kerberos. On top of that, though, where we specialize as well is allowing you to include federation in your capabilities here. So with our Access Policy Management module, which is APM, I'm going to talk about APM quite a lot during this presentation. We have the ability to be both a SAML identity provider and a SAML service provider, or both at the same time. So there is the ability then to federate access through to applications that potentially you may host or potentially you may not host on your environment. So things like software as a service applications, for example, can be delivered side by side with your enterprise applications that you're hosting on-premise to your users with single sign-on, and hiding the complexity of having to manage multiple different application delivery options and delivery access requirements to your end users. So very, very strong client authentication capabilities there, and of course fully integrated across the Microsoft stack. So TMG brought firewall capabilities, which obviously when you're going to be making applications available to the World Wide Web, as it were, is a must. And of course with F5 we have the same level of capability. We are actually an ICSA certified network firewall. We are firewall devices, and we are able to bring capability from layer 3 up through layer 7, actually, from a firewall perspective. So the ability to apply stateful firewall rules, as you would expect with a network firewall, but not limited to that, because we are a full proxy as well, which effectively means we terminate all connections and then decide where they can go afterwards. So we can do a combination of both the layer 3 type of traditional firewall rules, but then we lay that on top of what we do with the proxy capability, which means that we can be much more granular in how we apply our firewall rules, and we can also do that on a per application level. So rather than having a global rule set, as you would traditionally have with F5, you can actually say, right, for this application, be it Exchange or SharePoint or something similar, I want to apply this specific set of firewall rules just to that application, which makes more sense from a management perspective. In addition, we have hardware DDoS mitigation built into our appliances. We mitigate over 100 of the most common network level DDoS attacks, so things like your SIM floods, broken connection type attacks, out of the box in dedicated hardware, which means that we actually stand up to many of the attacks that have been most prevalent over the last 12, 18 months without even impacting our core functions, because we have dedicated hardware on the appliances that will do the defense against those types of attacks for you. In addition, the ability for our appliances to scale is much, much greater than even the most robust of the traditional firewall sets. With F5, our connection tables are huge. We will never get to a point where the boxes will be compromised due to connection type attacks. And of course, we're a full proxy, so everything that comes through our appliance gets stopped, terminated, inspected. We can understand whether it's good or bad, whether we should even be processing it any further, and we can start to do things like inject cookies, for example, into traffic if we start to see attack vectors come in from somewhere, so that we can track those attacks, understand them, and block them before they become an issue for your environment. So very, very granular capabilities from F5 in the network firewall and DDoS prevention space. That uses our Advanced Firewall Manager module. Again, this is another module that sits on TMOS, and that brings the layer 3 capabilities and management and the DDoS capabilities there for you. From a remote access and VPN space, so TMG brought a few different access protocols to bear. It obviously gave you the ability to make remote access with VPN available, and allowed quite granular control. With F5, we take remote access to a whole different level. Our APM product, in my opinion, is the most granular remote access solution available on the market, and also, in my opinion, it has the best management in terms of how you define and how you manage the rules that you need to apply to allow your applications to be available. We have the ability to provide very strong AAA authentication, very granular access control down to an application level, integration with most of the core remote access solutions that you would probably consider, so things like RDP or Citrix or VMware View, for example. We have very strong integrations across all of those, allowing you to define resources that your users can access with granular control based upon who they are, where they are, what devices they're on, what access they should have, and an understanding of the health of their devices, whether it's corporate, whether it's BYOD, these kind of things. We can do that very easily with APM. And I'm going to show you an example a little bit later on of a visual policy where you can actually take your security and your policy, your postures that you want to apply for remote access, and literally map it step by step through how you actually make that available to the user in a flowchart kind of way that will make sense to you, rather than having to write very complicated expressions just to actually make remote access available, or rather than having a very binary solution which says I can give a user access, it will be access granted or access denied, which most end solutions have traditionally done. And I guess the final main step in TMG is the application level firewall. So TMG offers some layer 7 filtering on the, or effectively application checking when they're delivering web-based application functionality effectively. But there's some, I guess, some challenges, subscription services needed and so on. F5's capability in this space is market leading. I'll be frank, we are huge vendor in the web application firewall space, and again, we have a very, very comprehensive set of abilities that we can bring to bear here. Well, obviously, this is a web application firewall, so we're focused on web application traffic primarily, but as you can see, we also support SMTP, FTP, and XML security, so that we can do things like schema checking on business-to-business kind of transactions. From an application protection perspective, our capabilities are extremely granular. We have the ability not only to apply standard signature kind of checking to your appliance, to your applications, we have the ability to learn how your applications are used, how they should be used, and then to apply controls against the application access that you have without compromising the application functionality, but whilst applying the strongest level of control that that can't be circumvented just as you would by applying standard signatures. Having an understanding of how your application's used, where the users should be flowing through your application stack, what kind of parameters that we can put in every field. These are the kind of things that allow you to say, actually, I have confidence that when I make my applications externally facing, that they are going to be secure. If you apply things like the OWASP top 10, well, that will meet quite a lot of the attacks that your application may come up against. It might not necessarily fit your application functionality perfectly. This is just standard-based, signature-based checking, and we have that. You can limit it to that if you want to do that, but ASM will take that to just a whole different level. The key, obviously, is understanding how your applications are designed to function, understanding what should be within your applications and how your users should be using it, and then defining automatic policies based on that you can integrate with things like your test tools, your application vulnerability scans, and so on. Can feed straight into this, allow you to have great confidence that your applications are protected. And of course, if you are concerned about things like zero-day attacks, things like we've seen recently, or the last couple of years, where we've had things like shell shock and attacks against Apache servers and so on, or against IIS kind of things that may not actually be down to your application stack themselves, and maybe underlying infrastructure. The good thing with ASM is ASM can effectively be the bandage in front of your applications, fixing these on the fly, whilst you then remediate your issues in the background. So huge capability in this space, very comprehensive, and as I said, market leader. And that's our application security manager module there. From a reverse proxy perspective, well, I've mentioned a couple of times, actually F5 are a full proxy. The reverse proxy bit, though, is relevant in that we are a breakpoint in the traffic incoming to your organization in terms of authentication against your application. So we can actually offload authentications for things like Exchange, where we can do the authentication piece in that breakpoint, talking to your AD or LDAP or Radius or whatever, and then feed that information through into your Microsoft application stack. Clearly, the idea is that you have a breakpoint. There is no direct access through to your application environment. And a term that I use very, very often is we then have the ability to be a strategic point of control for you, for your environment, bringing all of these services to bear, as well as allowing you to apply the strong controls that I mentioned before. I did mention about the flowchart piece with the pre-authentication and the remote access VPN kind of functionality, and there was an example on screen about now. And as you can see, if we just quickly walk through that, the user is presented with a login prompt. Now that might be one that looks like OWA or an Exchange prompt, or it might just be a landing page that we direct the user to. We authenticate them, we check them against AD in this case. As you can see, depending on whether we have a successful query, we then provide two-factor authentication on the top layer there. or we've got a different set of access, or declined access for those who fail AD in the first place. And then there's various different levels of resource available to the users under certain circumstances. So this is what I'm saying. You can very easily map the resources you want to make available to the security policies that you have and the postures that you want to obtain without having to go through extensive development to do that. And obviously it makes it simpler to manage as well going forward. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, just a quick overview of where we are at F5, where we are in terms of our ability to integrate with your Microsoft stack. And I'll be very frank with you, as I mentioned, Microsoft are one of our biggest partners, and we have many, many global companies who use F5 to deliver their Microsoft applications in a very large way. So this is not new for us. This is not new technology. This is something that we are obviously focused on, and we are continuing to work with Microsoft very closely on very large deals globally on a day-to-day basis. So with that, I'll hand you back to Shona, and we will open the floor up for any questions.
Thanks, Paul. I'd just like to invite anyone who's on the call to pop any questions into the question box regarding any element of replacing TMG, any questions you've got about your individual business cases in terms of what TMG is doing for your business, and myself and Paul will be more than happy to take those out. I have one question for Paul there, and for one of the delegates, just to kick things off.
Sure.
One of the delegates uses TMG as a web cache linked to WebSense to manage and control access to the internet from inside his organisation, nothing coming in from outside. This way of use wasn't covered this morning. Is there anything that F5 can add to the party, or any advice you'd like to give on that?
So yes, absolutely, and it's a great question. One of the areas of functionality that I haven't touched on, which is probably relevant actually, so thanks for asking, is our secure web gateway functionality. And effectively this is our outbound proxy capability, our ability to control access going out of your environment through doing things such as URL classification and categorization, and then applying that against different resources. And actually, the integration that we have there is in conjunction with WebSense. So we OEM's WebSense's threat management database. It's on board. It's integrated into TMOS, and we get updates from WebSense around that. So keeping that up to date. So we actually have the ability to consolidate across that tier. I'll be frank, we don't have fantastic caching capabilities because we don't have huge disks in these devices. But there are other ways of doing that. You could use commodity cache. The idea really is to apply the control, I guess. So yes, we have very good capability in terms of how you could actually apply in this strategic point of control access coming in as well as access going outbound from your environment.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. I have another question from one of the audience around asking specifically where he can access his sizing guide and what he would do about that.
Okay, we have multiple data sheets available on f5.com, for example. These detail not only capability in terms of throughput that we can manage. As I said, we have a range of devices and virtual platforms that you could consider. We will be able to scale from the smallest environment to the very largest environment. Our scalability is unmatched. These data sheets will give you an idea not only on the throughput capabilities, but also in terms of a number of things like number of VPN session capabilities and so on. On top of that, I'd recommend that you take a look at our Dev Central site. That's devcentral.f5.com. We actually have a very active community at F5. We've got around about 140,000 active users on Dev Central who are constantly updating the site. There's a lot of very good articles on there in terms of F5 capabilities and integrations, including for TMG. So please do take a look. Guaranteed that if there's anything that you need to know about F5, somebody will have already asked it on there. So please do take a look on Dev Central. But masses of information and reference architecture is available to you on f5.com.
To that questioner, I'm more than happy to have your Bytes account manager provide those resources to you, and also have a chat to you about your individual infrastructure and what would be best in terms of the amount of users and the size of your estate. So we can certainly take that offline after the webinar. So I do have one more question from gentleman regarding Netscaler. So it talks about how well, it's a question about how well will F5 integrate with Netscaler?
Will it integrate with Netscaler? That's a question, sorry.
How well?
So, I'm sorry, Shannon, the line broke up when you were asking the question.
How well, as in how well, will F5 integrate with Netscaler?
All right. So I guess the question would be then is what role is Netscaler playing in the environment? Is it doing load balancing? Is it doing remote access? Clearly, there is significant overlap in terms of what F5 and Netscaler do. Although there are environments out in the field where both are in play. With F5 doing, for example, firewall or web application firewall role, with Netscaler doing simple load balancing or something like that. But clearly, we compete in this space. So what I would say is from an F5 perspective, please do take a look. I think you'll find that the integrations that we can bring, particularly with Microsoft, with the way that we deploy Microsoft applications through F5, I think you'll find surprising. As someone who worked for Citrix for 12 years before moving to F5, I'm very familiar with Netscaler. So yes, please do take a look. I think it'll be an eye-opener for you.
As regards that person's second questions about a breakdown of costs for outbound proxy, I will forward that to your account manager to make sure that is covered off after the call. So I do have another question, so maybe out of questions now. One gentleman here uses the ISA TMG firewall client to redirect non-browser internet-bound connections via the TMGs. Is there an equivalent client with F5?
Yes. Well, we don't. Well, okay. So we can do either. We have a client. It's called the Edge client, which will work across pretty much every platform you can think of, mobile and otherwise. But we also have the ability to deliver clientless access. So this is the thing that I was saying before. We're not just like a typical VPN where you would provide either a client or you would provide a browser-based client effectively. We have the ability to proxy the applications out on an individual per application basis. We want to do that. And this effectively means that we wrap them in SSL. We do the breakpoint in front. We can do the strong authentication. We don't actually need to be doing VPN when we do that. There are various different use case scenarios which we could dig into. I think it's a longer conversation for today, but the simple answer is yes. There are lots of different ways you can do it with F5.
Okay, again, the question there, I'll make sure that specific question is fed back to your account manager, who can look into that with the F5 team in more detail, should that be something of interest. I do have a couple of questions around F5 device and module licensing. We don't usually discuss on the call, but however, as we have had 3 or 4 people ask, is F5 licensed per user or per appliance? How are the devices and modules licensed? All right,
so so first of all, you buy your appliances based on throughput primarily. It depends on the use case that you're going to deliver. So for example, if you're going to deliver access to Exchange using ActiveSync, for example, there is no user license cost for that. We use what we call access sessions. If you wanted to provide full VPN functionality, then that consumes a CCU for current user license. In terms of the modules, so we actually have bundles that you can buy, depending on which modules you wish to use. We have what we call a good, better, best module combination, and there's actually some very significant discounts for buying in a module format over just buying individual modules. You can still do it that way, but But the idea is, if you're going to need the requirements of the WAF and the remote access and the firewall and so on, it makes much more sense to buy the better or the best packages, for example, because they bring all of that functionality together at discounted price. So yeah, what we would want to do is have a look at what your user numbers look like, your throughput, and then we could give you a more accurate indication as to what that would look like.
Absolutely. Again, I'll make sure that both the gentlemen that asked that question have the opportunity to discuss that as regards their individual estate with their account manager and with F5 directly after the call. I have a last question here from a gentleman here saying, talking about migration from TMG. Are there any tools available to migrate from TMG? The gentleman's assuming it's a build from scratch, and can it also handle multiple security zones?
So I'll start in reverse order. Yes, absolutely. We are a full firewall, so we can define multiple zones within that, and quarantine zones, these kind of things, should you choose to do so. To be frank, we're moving from a Windows-based environment through to a network appliance-based environment, so no specific migration tool for that. However, what I would say is one of our key advantages, and I was talking about speed and time to deployment before, is the work that we've done with Microsoft, specifically around the Microsoft application stack, to simplify and speed delivery of things like Exchange and SharePoint and so on. We have what we called IAPs. These are contextually aware templates, which you might have a 20-question template that will refactor depending on what your answers look like to get Exchange delivered. In fact, if you ask any Microsoft engineer when they come in and there's F5 in the environment, they're very happy because they can reduce an Exchange deployment time to days from weeks. So.
Okay, thanks for all your questions. I'll just give a couple of seconds for any additional questions. You can review it at your leisure and share it with your teams. Thank Paul very much for his very detailed explanation of the F5 solutions for replacing TMG and why TMG will need to be replaced. And thank you